Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Let's Have Words. I'm your host, Lara Samuels. This is the first episode of the show where we talk mostly about we talk about three things in particular, the three things that come together, and that would be the biodiversity crisis, the climate crisis, and pollution. These are, you can call them one thing, you call them the triple threat. These are the things that are affecting our environment, and the idea is that we address these problems together. We don't address them in isolation. So the reason why Let's Have Words started was because I am particularly concerned about the biodiversity crisis, which I've always been a nature lover all of my life, and so just a few years ago, I really started to wake up to how bad the loss of nature has become. And when I had that epiphany, it really sort of broke my brain. And since then, I have been unable to think about anything else because nature to me is one of the most valuable things, if not the most valuable thing. And to watch it get slowly destroyed by human activity, to watch the sixth extinction unfold before my very eyes is a very scary thing to me. I'm also concerned about the climate. They're related, right? The climate, of course, the fact that we're warming the planet by burning fossil fuels. By the way, it's the position of the show that we are warming the planet and that we are doing so by burning fossil fuels. That is the position of the show, is also affecting nature and causing biodiversity loss. It's not the only cause, though. This is the important thing. When we think about biodiversity loss, we have to remember that climate isn't the only factor. We also, there's habitat destruction, pesticides, and, invasive species, other things that are leading to the decline. Most species are in decline. I know the most shocking statistic to me is that there's been an average 73% decline in wildlife populations in the last 50 years. So that is, when I heard that statistic, it just blew my mind. And I knew that, I had to do what I could. I mean, there's not a lot I can do. I'm not a powerful person. I don't have a lot of money. I don't have a lot of connections. There's not a lot I can do to address this, but whatever I can do that's within my power and talents, I would like to try and solve this problem. I want to point out that a lot of times people, when you think about an environmental show or you think about, environmentalists, everybody immediately assumes that you are doom and gloom, right? And that all you want to do is talk about how terrible things are. And that is not the case. I really don't think that's the case at all. I think that's a myth, 100% a myth, but definitely not on this show are we interested in doom and gloom. We there's a difference between raising awareness and recognizing the urgency of a situation. There's a big difference between that and, being an alarmist, right, which is a word that's often used, or, coming to the conclusion that this is an intractable problem or an unsolvable problem. I happen to believe in the innovative capacity of humanity, and I happen to believe that we as humans can solve these really difficult problems. Now, they're hard, right? They're hard. These are difficult problems to solve, but we can. I mean, we're capable of it, and we have the technology, let's face it. I mean, we could transition over to sustainable energy and to a nature-positive future tomorrow if we wanted to. I mean, we have the technology. It's just a matter of will, really, and the will to change, which is difficult for people to change. So I'm just kind of laying out, the philosophy of the show. So we focus on the triple threat: the biodiversity crisis, climate change, and pollution. These three great tastes that go great together, right? It's all one thing. They're interdependent. They're not to be considered in isolation. We can't talk about our renewable energy future without addressing biodiversity. And the nice thing is that these three things can go together. We can think about how we can transition to a cleaner future without relying on poisons, without destroying destroying habitat in order to support the needs of humans. It's a complicated problem. There's a lot of factors, and that's what we want to talk about on the show. We want to talk about the different facets of this problem, how we solve it, what are the newest technologies that exist in order to solve it. We mostly want to focus on solutions, but we do have to raise awareness. So with that in mind, let's do the numbers. All right, so here are a few statistics for you. Nearly half of more than 70,000 animal species on Earth are in decline. Now, these are nearly half of more than. I want to make sure I get this right. We don't like to be inaccurate on this show. By the way, did I mention this is a call-in show? This is a call-in show. You can call in anytime, and you can call in with comments. You can call in with questions. You can call in with corrections, or modifications, whatever you want. But the one thing that you can't call in with is a bad attitude, okay? So we do want people on this show that can be civil, and we can have these discussions even if we disagree, right? So I do require that people that are calling in, there's nothing wrong with passion, there's nothing wrong with feeling strongly about something, but that doesn't necessarily mean that everything has to devolve into, disrespect and vitriol and name calling and all of that sort of thing. That is not what this show is about. This show is about calm discussion. And the thing is too, that we're, on this show, we want to talk about ideas for moving towards a nature positive, sustainable future. So, that's our goal. So whatever you have to offer or contribute is really, really important. All right, so this is a call-in show. The number, I hope, is there on the screen for you to dial in. If you'd like, you can call in anytime. All right, so on Let's Do the Numbers, what we do is we do some numbers. We don't do the stock market, right? Because one of the problems, I think, that we face is that we focus so much on the economy and wealth and people making money and consumerism, and we don't focus on all the damage that's doing to the planet, the damage that's doing to nature, the damage that's doing to human health. And, that is what I think our economy should really, start to put at the center. And this is, I'm not the only person that thinks this, that, that we need to stop focusing so much on a consumer consumer output or product output or whatever, the GDP, right? We want to focus more on, having a healthy planet and having healthy people that live on a healthy planet, right? That should be our goal, right? And if people, and I'm not talking about supplanting the economy. I mean, people can still make a living, they can still make money, right? They just need to do so in a way that's sustainable and in a way that doesn't harm human health and the environment. So that's a new focus for the economy, right? So the reason I do Let's Do the Numbers is to it's a bit of a satire, right? Because because instead of focusing on the stock market, we're focusing on the decline that we're seeing in the environment, the quality of the environment, the decline in nature, right? And, once again, doom and gloom, of course, because here we are raising awareness, right? So in order to raise awareness, you gotta face facts. You gotta face what's happening so you can fix it. If you can't face a problem, you can't fix a problem. By the way, this is a call-in show. Call in anytime. All right. Nearly half of more than 70,000 animal species are in decline. So that's 70,000 species. There are many more animal species on the planet, not just 70,000. So those are the ones that have been evaluated, and almost half of those are in decline. Most are, the rest of them are either stable or even increasing. There are some that are increasing. Where I lifted this statistic from is this book, which I'm reading, which you should read too, called Becoming Nature Positive. And either it didn't say or I didn't write down, which animal species were being evaluated. So I'm not sure if that includes insects or whatever, but it's just half of more than 70,000 animal species are in decline. And, the ones that are increasing, I wonder if that are the pest species, like, mice, which I love mice. I don't like to call them pests. By the way, I don't like to use the word pests. I'll do the air quotes every time I say pests. I don't like to use that word. But the species that we regard as pests, or the groups of animals that we regard as pests, so, rats and mice and mosquitoes and ticks, I wonder if those are the ones that are increasing. It wouldn't surprise me. All right. Half of the world's natural forests have been destroyed. Half of the world's natural forests have been destroyed. I'm surprised, actually. I would think it was more than that. I wonder if that means, I think that we have messed with more than half the forests on Earth, but maybe we haven't completely destroyed half the forest. So these are the ones that have been destroyed. I'm sure more than that have been modified in one way or another. That would be my guess. Half of corals have been destroyed. 85% of wetlands. That's a very shocking statistic to me. Every time I hear about building on a wetland, or we've already lost 85% of our wetlands. Let that sink in for a while. So only 15% left, and this would be since, I don't know, probably since 1970 or something like that, or maybe earlier. I'm not sure. Maybe since the turn of the century. I didn't write that down, but that's still, it doesn't matter. That's a lot. We have really, really wrecked our wetlands, and wetlands are so important. They're so important for, to protect us from, flooding and to purify water, and of course it has habitat for all kinds of animals, other things, not just animals, microorganisms, fungi, plants, of course. Okay, 90% of commercial fish are fully fished or overfished. 90% of commercial fish are either fully fished, meaning they've reached their maximum, about 60% have reached their maximum, or overfished, 34%. So when you overfish, of course, you're not allowing the fish to regenerate. So you're taking more fish, you're depleting the fish stocks faster than they can be replaced. That's what overfishing is all about. Half the world's GDP relies on nature scarcity. So something that I didn't write down, but is a statistic that really surprises me when I think about it, and I should have written it down, but I'm just going to tell you, is that every year annually we do something like $7 trillion worth of damage to the planet. When I say we, I mean humans, right? Just as a group. $7 trillion worth of nature destroying every year, compared to something like $200 billion invested in conservation and preservation and restoration. So who's going to win over time, right? I mean, even though we feel like we're doing a lot of stuff, I mean, 200 billion seems like a lot of money, even though we feel like we're doing a lot of stuff to address the nature crisis, when we're competing against $7 trillion worth. I read somewhere another way to put it, and I haven't actually checked to see if the math works out, but I've heard it put a different way. For every dollar spent on conservation, preservation, restoration, there's $30 spent on destruction. So who's gonna lose that equation? Okay, so even though we may be, trying, every day we read about wonderful things that are happening, conservation initiatives and all of that. It's not addressing the problem. It's not enough. Our lifestyles, the Western lifestyle specifically, consumer lifestyles, our lifestyle is by its very is essentially anti-nature. The way we live is anti-nature. The way we live. So in order to become nature positive, in order to move forward, we have to change our economy. There's just no way around it. We have to change how we do things. Does not necessarily mean sacrifice. It means change. It doesn't necessarily mean, that people have to suffer some way. I mean, people have to change. They have to change their values a little bit, and they have to change their behavior. I mean, it's as simple as that. We can do it. We can do it, people. It is, and it's for a better world. It's in order to live better, not to live worse, to live better, right? A lot of innovation involved here, which we'll talk about later. Okay. Ocean pH has dropped from 8.15 to 8.05. Now, that doesn't sound like a big drop, right? If you don't know anything about pH, right? I mean, I'm a nurse. That's what I do for a living. Well, actually, right now I teach nursing. I did work as a nurse for a little while. And you learn, of course, with the blood pH, right, that, if it's even knocked just a little bit out of range, it can result in, terrible sickness and ultimately death. It doesn't take much of a pH change to really knock the chemistry out of whack, right? In fact, according to this wonderful book that I'm reading, Becoming Nature Positive, this is where I lifted most of these statistics. Some of them I'm pulling out of my brain, but most of them I got them out of here. I like numbers. This is let's do the numbers. We're actually doing some numbers. All right. 250 million years ago, there's a number, ocean acidification caused the extinction of all, I'm going to underline that twice, all marine life. So, all right, the pH, hopefully, the pH scale, it's moving down from 8.15 to 8.05. That means it's becoming more acidic. When this happened, maybe it was a larger degree, but when this happened 250 million years ago, it resulted in the extinction of all marine life. So that's how important it is, right? What are we doing here? Are we being alarmists? No. Are we raising the alarm? Yes. This is an urgent. We're talking urgent. This is urgent. This is unsustainable. We cannot live like this anymore. We are depleting the resources on this planet. Our entire economy is based on the unsustainable exploitation of natural resources. That's what our economy is founded on. And if we don't change, I mean, then it is doom and gloom. But we can change. That's the point, right? We can, but we have to accept it. It can't be all this denial. By the way, this is a call-in show. Did I mention that? I think I did. So hopefully the number's there on the screen, and you can call in anytime. If you have some statistics of your own, some shocking statistics of your own, please feel free to share. 21. I have a few more. Then we'll move on to a different segment. 20 out of 21,000 rivers evaluated, 80% are losing oxygen due to warming temperatures. Because I guess warm water, oxygen doesn't dissolve as easily in warm water, so the warmer the water, the less oxygen, which is going to be a problem for the ecosystems, aquatic ecosystems in rivers. 52% of our soils are depleted. Whoa, 52. More than half of our soils have been depleted of, nutrients, probably due to, I would imagine, intensive farming. Speaking of farming, agriculture is responsible for 70% of biodiversity loss, 80% of deforestation, and 70% of and use 70% of fresh water. So altering how we grow food is really going to be a huge piece of changing how we live to become nature positive and clean and sustainable for the future. this is our only planet, you know. I know there's people that think, well, we can just trash this planet and move to another one. Well, I don't know. I don't know. Even if that were true, I don't know if it's a good idea to trash your planet anyway. That seems very wasteful. That would be like you bought a house and then you just trashed it and then went and bought another one. That's stupid, right? You want to take care of your stuff. You want to take care of your things, right? And we should take care of our planet. We shouldn't be dumping poisons into our planet all the time and destroying the beautiful, wonderful nature, the magical nature that's here, sharing the planet with us. By the way, it's another position of the show that nature, that the depletion of nature is not just a question of our own survival. It's also a social justice issue. I mean, the animals live here just like we do. We don't have any more right to be here than they do, and so we need to make room for them. That's it. We all share the planet. Our economy at this point operates on the principle that somehow human needs are more important than nature needs, and I personally don't think that's true. So you can call in and talk to me about it if you'd like. All right. So another way that you want to think about these ideas is that we're moving from, which I really like this concept, because it really helps me really imagine a better future, which is what this is all about. It's all about imagining a better future, having a vision for the future of this planet that's very different than the one that we have right now. And we have to start transitioning now. So this is why we're talking about it. That's why we're talking about trying to spread the word, trying to get people to think about these things now so that we can change now. Humans are very lethargic. We don't like to, we don't like to change. And, right, we don't like change. So it really takes a lot of convincing and persuasion to get people to do things differently. And you also, I think, have to convince people that there's something better on the other side, right? So I like this. We moved from dependence. So this was like pre-industrial society, depending on nature, right? Depending on nature for our survival, to independence, which is where we are now, which is where we've separated ourselves from nature and are busy destroying it. But where we have to go next, okay, because we're here. I mean, I wish we hadn't gone through this phase, but here we are. And we have to move towards interdependence, right? Where we recognize that we're part of nature, that we're interdependent, and we live in such a way that's in harmony with the natural world and isn't constantly destroying it. All right, so let's do the numbers. So the next segment is called What's on Lara's Mind?
What's on Lara's mind tonight? What's on Lara's mind?
Yes, and what's on your mind? Because this is a call-in show, so if you'd like to call in and talk about some of these topics, we started out just sort of going through some of the statistics that I pulled out of this wonderful book that I'm reading called Becoming Nature Positive, and we talked about some shocking statistics. I'm shocked. I don't know about you. I'm feeling shocked, and we reminded viewers about what the philosophy of the show is. Or there's like several philosophies of the show, right? So they will come out over time. But we talked about how it is the position of the show that climate change is real and it's caused by us burning fossil fuels, and it's the position of the show that biodiversity loss is occurring, and it's occurring because of us, and that we're in the midst of a sixth extinction. And it's the position of the show that the unsustainable exploitation of natural resources is the foundation of our economy. And in order to, have a better future, we need to alter the way we think about how we live, right? We need to change our behavior. We need to change our economy, change our mindset. Most importantly, that's what's at the root of it, right? That's what this show is all about. And I told people a little bit about myself. I'm somebody who just cares deeply, especially about nature loss, and I want to do what I can to get these ideas out into the world. Another thing I should mention now is that I really feel, and I don't know if it's just a feeling, I mean, I haven't been keeping track, but I think there's plenty of evidence to back up this feeling that I'm having, that our political discourse at this moment is, number one, incredibly anti-nature, and number two is basically ignoring our environmental problems. And I think this is a mistake. In fact, I think that the environment should be, I mean, I will identify myself politically. I would say that I am firmly in the progressive camp. However, I'm very disappointed in the amount of what I would call like just sort of ignoring, even in the progressive, even progressives are ignoring our environmental problems, when in fact I think it should be our central focus, right? I think we're focusing, I think when I say we, I'm talking about just like sort of the mainstream discourse, right, is very much focused on affordability and that sort of thing. But we're not talking about the environment. We're not talking about pollution. We're not talking about biodiversity loss. And I think those things should be the center of, it should really be the central principle of a winning what I think would be a winning platform, if we really, really start to focus on this stuff. And remember, being focused on the environment and on biodiversity loss, that is also people positive, right? That is also thinking about people, because who suffers the most from the destruction of the environment, but poor and working class people. I mean, so I don't think that these ideas are separate. I think that they're tied together. I think we can talk about them together, but I think ignoring our environmental problems, especially at this critical time, is really a stupid move. And so it makes me very angry. It makes me very angry that even among people who I know care about this particular issue, they're busy either ignoring it, not talking about it, they don't think it's a winning issue for whatever reason. It's just fallen off the radar, and it's fallen off the radar at the most critical time to be talking about it. I mean, the climate change and biodiversity loss, this is happening quickly. This is not something we can put off for 20 years. We have to address it now. And being silent about it is not the answer. I also think if you frame it the right way, I think that it's really a bipartisan issue. I think you can really get a huge coalition of people who care. I've seen that in my own experience. That this is a bipartisan issue. So it's inclusive. It's something that can bring people together. And I don't understand why that isn't being considered in our political discourse. So that's another reason I'm doing the show now, because I feel very angry that the climate and biodiversity loss, pollution, that these things are being left out of the conversation. So that's another reason why I'm doing the show now. All right. Well, anyway, this is a call-in show, and on this, you can call in with comments, you can call in with questions, you can call in, you can disagree with me as long as it's civil, right? We have no problem with passion. We have no problem with opposition, but we do have a problem with being uncivil. So that is not what this show is all about. We can disagree, and we can have conversations without insulting one another, and that's what adults do. So we only talk with adults on the show. No kids. All right. Let's see. Green energy. Oh, what did I want to talk about? I wanted to talk about, so I'm really focused on this nature positive idea. And the nature positive movement is one in which what that means, okay, is right now nature is in decline, right? So being nature positive means you're actually reversing that decline, right? There's more nature. There are actually goals, there are to reach nature positive by 2030 or something. I forget what the actual goal is. Anyway, so but there are set goals, that we start reversing biodiversity loss. And a key principle of the nature positive movement, this is really important, so listen up. Key principle is that we are not going to get there being nature positive. We're not going to get there with conservation alone. Conservation is important, conservation matters, but what we need to do is integration. And integration means working nature into our everyday lives. It also means working nature into industry, right? So this is a huge task to try and convince people who are, the drivers of biodiversity loss, such as agriculture and development. I mean, these are the people that we need to persuade to change how they do things, to move towards a more nature positive world. So what I wanted to do, so I'm thinking about that all the time. And, we can talk maybe next time, maybe on the next show, we'll talk about regenerative agriculture. I was speaking to somebody the other day who was a farmer, and he said he didn't know what that meant. So I think we have to do a better job, defining these things and talking about what that term really means on the ground. But we'll do that next time, because this time I want to talk about construction. So I was thinking about data centers. This is where this thread began in my brain. Okay. So I was thinking about data centers and how, people are opposed to data centers. We know the reasons why people are opposed to them. I'm opposed to them. But they're being built anyway. I mean, even if people manage to drive data centers out of their neighborhood, I mean, they're going to be built somewhere. These people have so much money and so much power. I mean, they always find a way, right? This is the problem. You win this much, but they win this much, right? I mean, I don't want to frame it as an us versus them, but, people with a lot of resources, people with a lot of money and power and influence, they'll get their way one way or another. I do believe that. I think that sometimes we have small victories, but I don't know that we win. So we win the battles, but we don't win the war, right? So I'm more interested in winning the war than I am the battles. So I was thinking about data centers. I was thinking, well, see, you got to start with this premise when you're thinking nature positively. You've got to start with this premise of you can't just tell these people no, right? You can't just say you can't build data centers. Although we'd like to say that, it's just not realistic, right? It's not realistic. They're going to find a way. So I was thinking about it. I was thinking, okay, how could you make data centers nature positive, right? And maybe this is a dumb idea. I don't know. But I was thinking, why couldn't data centers be small? And I'm sure this has been thought of. I'm sure this wasn't an original idea on my part. Why do they have to be these behemoths? Maybe somebody can call in and tell me. I don't know. Why do they have to be massive? They're always huge. And, apparently loud and bright. And, of course you have to destroy nature when you build these things. After they're running, they've got this humming noise, which I'm sure I've only heard about this, right? They're loud. And I wonder, how does that disrupt nature? I mean, nature needs quiet, right? Birds need to communicate with each other. They're going to be affected. Animals are very sensitive to their environment, and they would be very much affected by that. And then there's the lights, right? Lights are terrible. I mean, we really have to stop lighting up our night skies, because one of the issues is that, our nighttime insects and the animals that depend on them are in decline. And the lights that we have on at night are part of that. They're one of the major factors that contributing to that decline. So the lights are bad, the sound's bad, the footprint is bad, everything's bad. And I thought, well, why couldn't these things be small, right? Why couldn't they be integrated into, parking lots and there could be lots of them. Instead of having one big one, you could have lots of little ones. And why couldn't they be covered with nature? They could have green roofs. I even thought, this is really a crazy idea, but I did think about this. I was thinking, why not have a data center that went over a road? It was a bridge, and it could be a wildlife crossing. You could have animals walk across it. I mean, I know it's got this vibration problem. Maybe that it wouldn't work because of that, but I'm not actually even sure if that's true. The loud humming, I don't know. So, but I was thinking, you could build them as bridges, and animals could go over them, and you integrate them into the environment. That's being nature positive, right? So you have and I know that there are a lot of issues with AI that are outside the scope of this this show, and I know there the energy problems, the water, all that. I know there are a lot more problems, but this is just the seed of an idea. It's like, why do they have to be so big is my question. Why can't they be small? So I started thinking about that. And so I was starting to think about some of the more challenging, because you could, agriculture, you could do regenerative agriculture, construction, there's all kinds of ways to build where you don't have to. Maybe we should talk about that next time too, because I think we don't really have time to dive into that. We only have a few more minutes, but, there's all kinds of things you can do with construction too that's nature positive, like building rain gardens instead of storm drains, and building up instead of out, things like that. I was also thinking about golf courses. It's like, how do you make a golf course nature positive? That seems impossible. But then I thought, well, you know what you could do? You could put golf courses up on a platform, a giant platform. I think golf people would love this, right? Because it's very exotic. You elevate the golf course, and then you could have places like bridges, where people could walk between the holes, and so that would let light in underneath, and then you could have habitat underneath. You could have ponds, and you could have areas where light shone through, so you could have little meadows under there, and so all the nature could be underneath the golf course, and then the golf course could be over it. And there you have a nature positive golf course right there. See? Now, of course, golf courses use a lot of chemicals, which would also have to be addressed. But it was just a thought I had. It's like, how do you make these things nature positive? And this is what I want to think about on this show. So going forward, we're gonna talk about a lot of things. But one thing I'm really focused on is how do we move forward into a nature positive future? What are the things that we need to do? What are the steps we need to take? What are the industries that need to be convinced that this is the way to go? In fact, it's the only way to go, and it's better, right? And I still think people can make money. They might have to sacrifice. I don't know if they have to. I don't know. I think people can still make money. I don't think that is something that needs to go away. I wish it would go away. I hate money. All right. So the last section, I think we're going to cut it off because we only have one more minute. But the last section, I'll play we'll play the little introduction part so that you guys can see it. It's called Peruse the News.
It's time to peruse the news. It's time to peruse the news. It's time to peruse the news. It's time to peruse the news.
Is about just sort of like what are some of the things that people read about this week having to do with pollution, biodiversity loss, climate change. And people can call in. They can talk about some things that they read. Mostly positive things, I would hope. So there was one thing that I read I wanted to say because we try to only go to for 45 minutes. So there's no real ending to the show, but we try to go for about 45 minutes. We get the wind farm in Massachusetts just opened. That's good. I think that's good. By the way, I did read this week too about how, which I already knew, but I guess some report came out this week or something about how, the evidence seems to be. We're collecting a lot of evidence that it's not wind farms that are killing whales. It's not that's not what's causing whale deaths. There's a lot of things causing whale deaths that we can discuss at some other point on the show. But boat strikes are a big killer of whales. Getting caught in fishing nets, it's a huge source of whale deaths. Climate change is depleting the food sources for whales, the plankton and everything, and decreasing their food sources. That's killing whales. These are the things that are killing whales. Wind farms are not killing whales. And by the way, wind farms can easily be nature positive. They can be converted into sort of like reefs, like coral reefs. You can have a lot of little things living on the bases of those things. They don't really kill birds either. That's the evidence seems to be that they're not really bird killers. Although if they are, I think that should be addressed. So I want to make that clear. Like, I am concerned. One thing that drives me crazy is when people dismiss biodiversity loss when it comes to green energy, and I don't think that's appropriate. I think if there is a problem, that if green energy is creating some sort of hazard for animals, I think we need to address it. I think it needs to be addressed. I think it can be addressed. There are ways to address it. But ignoring it and laughing at it and being like, oh, we're not going to give up wind energy for a couple of stupid birds, to act like that. I don't think that's appropriate. I think we do need to address those issues, obviously, because nature is my primary concern. We can do both. We can have a clean energy future and also be nature positive. We got to do those two things at the same time. I think I mentioned that at the top of the show. Seems like a good way to wind things up. One more thing. World's top 10% of consumers are driving most environmental damage. Yeah, rich people, it's you. World's top 10% of consumers are the ones that are doing most of the environmental damage, and this doesn't surprise me. And also, but the good news, so we'll leave it with some good news, right? The good news is that if it's really just a small percentage of the population that's really doing most of the pollution and most of the destruction, well, then they can fix it, right? They're the one that, it's a small portion of people, so those people are the ones that need to change, and they're the ones that need to fix the problem. They're the ones that created it primarily, so I think they're the ones that need to fix it. Is that actually realistic? Beats me, but it seems like a good position to have. Okay, so I always like to close the show, or I want to close the show. It's our first show. I want to close the show by saying that please remember that right now it's a radical act to be kind. So be kind to one another, be kind to the animals, even the little ones, even the little spiders and the little ants, and all life is precious. And being kind and being compassionate is one of the most important things that we all can do to make the world a better place. So Let's do that. All right.